How was the communication with Coach Kubiak, and as far as what he's telling you, the things to work on?
Yeah, just trying to, work on everything. I mean, we can't circle one thing. We want to, focus on. I'm new here. I just want to learn as much as I can and listen to what he's got to say and do it.
The New Orleans Saints made a very fascinating pick in the 5th round of the 2024 NFL Draft, getting Spencer Rattler from South Carolina. And we've gotten our first look at the former 5-star recruit in Saints minicamp. And while there has been some ups and downs, and Rattler is not likely going to be starting for the first couple of years of his career, his talent has been on full display in numerous clips that I've seen across social media. And really, when the Saints made this pick 150th overall, Rattler was always viewed as a developmental prospect, but somebody that has a very high ceiling. His arm talent is truly special. If you watch his film dating back all the way to even high school, you can see him off his back foot launching a pass 50 yards down the field. He's got fairly good athleticism as well. He can make things happen off script, which is not super common for every single quarterback in the National Football League. But in terms of being consistently accurate and also being on time and knowing where to go with the football, those are some of the things that Rattler will have to improve on if he ever does want to become a starting quarterback. But those physical characteristics do show up even on air. He's got a fairly quick release, and the ball fires out of his hand. You can definitely tell that he has a lot of arm strength. And personally, when you compare him to the other quarterbacks in the room, and Jake Haener, who was a late round pick last year for the Saints, and Derek Carr, the incumbent starter, I think it's fairly clear watching all three of them throw in camp that Rattler does have the most just pure passing talent out of the three. But obviously, there's more to that than the quarterback position. That's what the Saints are going to try to develop for Spencer Rattler in the next couple of seasons. Head coach Dennis Allen was asked about Rattler and what to expect from him in his rookie season, and he said the plan is that he comes in and he really basically competes, and we'll let the cards kind of play out as they do. He went on to say, I think we were excited about the fact that we got into the 5th round and he was still there. From where we had him graded on our board, we feel like this player was probably more of a 2nd or 3rd round talent, and the fact that he was still sitting there in the 5th round, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there were 6 quarterbacks already taken in this draft, and that's a little bit of a unique position in terms of the draft. So the fact that he fell all the way to us in the 5th round, we were really excited about that. And he finished it off saying he's got tremendous talent, and now it's just about getting him in here, teaching him the things that we want him to know, and being able to execute the things we want him to be able to execute. And the way that Dennis Allen summed everything up regarding Rattler as a prospect, I kind of coincide with that. Rattler was in college for 5 seasons, only started 4 years though, and as a redshirt freshman for Oklahoma, he did have his best statistical season, over 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. But I feel like most people know the story. Then Caleb Williams got subbed in for him after he was struggling in a first half in his sophomore season, and then things never really looked back. He had a transfer, he went to South Carolina, played there for 2 seasons, and his numbers were okay, nothing super spectacular, but I think the biggest improvement that he made last year as a senior was just taking care of the football. He only had 8 interceptions, and Rattler's situation is just so unique because he was in the spotlight when he was a kid in high school. He was on the Netflix show called Quarterback One. I actually was a pretty big fan of that series, but now that's kind of turned into a negative thing because Rattler during that time was pretty immature. He was making fun of teammates. He wasn't a super good guy in the locker room. So now a lot of people like to bring that up from something 5-6 years ago, and a lot of people like to bring that up why Rattler won't be good in the NFL or why he won't be, a good teammate. And my simple argument to that is I think people change, I think people mature, and after spending 5 years in college in 2 really big programs, I don't think Rattler would have lasted as a starting quarterback in the Power 5 if his maturity level did not improve. So that is something that I'm not even worried about at this stage of his career. There were some rumors that maybe that was a reason why he fell to the 5th round, because he was seen as a fairly decent prospect. I mean, he wasn't going to go in the 1st round, just because of how talented some of the top quarterbacks were this year. But if we're being honest here, and we look back to a few years ago when Kenny Pickett was drafted in the 1st round, when Mac Jones was drafted in the 1st round, if you just take the individual talent of all 3 of these players, I don't think it's crazy to say that Rattler has more talent than both of those guys. So I think the New Orleans Saints get tremendous value in day 3 of the NFL draft, getting somebody that has his physical characteristics, and it's going to be up to the new Saints offensive staff to really get the most out of him. That would be quarterbacks coach Andrew Janocko, who's entering his 1st season, and new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. But while Rattler will probably not get any game action outside of the preseason for at least the first 2 years of his career, the Saints have a pretty decent infrastructure in terms of just offensive talent. At running back, it's Alvin Kamara, who I still think is one of the best in the league. He only played in 13 games last year due to his suspension, but still went over 1,000 total yards and had 6 touchdowns. And while he is approaching that vaunted 30-year-old mark for a running back, I still think for the next handful of years he can produce pretty good numbers, and at the very least least just be a good outlet out of the backfield for Derek Carr, whoever is the starting quarterback. The wide receiver one is Chris Olave, the third-year player out of Ohio State, and he has emerged as one of the best young wide receivers in the league. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and I hope that continues to rise because I do have him in my Dynasty Fantasy League, so I'm hoping that we do see some more progress from the 24-year-old receiver. The wide receiver 2 position is filled in by Rashid Shaheed, who had a breakout season last year, over 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's already one of the best deep threats in the NFL. It's kind of his specialty, just getting behind the defense consistently. And Cedric Wilson Jr. is currently the wide receiver 3. He was signed this free agency, but I think second-year player A.T. Perry has a pretty unique skill set and could be somebody that does step in for that position. The Saints offensive line is very unique because it has a chance to be one of the best in the league, but also could run into some issues very quickly if like Ryan Ramczyk's knees cannot hold up. The interior of the offensive line with Nick Saldiveri at left guard, Eric McCoy at center, and Cesar Ruiz at right guard is very promising. The Saints' first-round pick this year was Talisa Fuaga out of Oregon State, and I'm a big fan of his game as well. Trevor Penning, who started multiple games there last season, has not panned out after the Saints drafted him pretty high in the draft a couple of seasons ago, so Fuaga is going to step in right away and replace him. And Ryan Ramczyk is an amazing right tackle when he is healthy. The issue, though, is he deals with injuries very often. And I can't make a New Orleans Saints video without talking about Derek Carr. Him being the starting quarterback is kind of the reason why I have faith that Spencer Rattler could take over this job in the near future. The Saints signed Carr to a 4-year, $150 million contract back in 2023. And although that contract is not terrible when you compare it to all the other quarterback contracts that have come out recently, I still think that's a pretty big overpay for Derek Carr and what he's been the last couple of seasons. His stats at face value last year were not bad, over 3,800 yards, 25 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, but he was still running into the same issues he has for majority of his career, struggling in the red zone, struggling under pressure, and struggling when the team got behind the sticks. I wouldn't rank Carr as a top 12 quarterback heading into the season, maybe not even top 15. I'd really have to go through and think about it, but I do think he would be around like that 15 to 17 range, and I still just don't understand why the Saints wanted to go out and sign him to be their quarterback for the next several years. The philosophy of the organization was the team around the quarterback is really good, and we just need a quarterback to facilitate things and just be average, and we'll be able to win the division, win maybe a playoff game or two. But as we saw last year, that was not the case. The Saints did not win the NFC South, and even if the Saints did, I think their ceiling was just one playoff win. And the way that I view the NFL is I would not want my team to just be an above average team that can only win maybe one playoff game every couple years. Like, yeah, you're competitive, but there's no hope for you to actually do what you're supposed to, and that's win the Super Bowl. And I don't think Derek Carr will ever get the Saints close to that. And even depending on how this season goes, the Saints cannot move on from Derek Carr after this year. With how they structure their contracts and how they keep pushing money down the road, Carr only has a $12 million cap hit this season, but a $51 million cap hit next year. If they were to cut him next year, he has a $50 million dead cap hit. So the first year that they could potentially get rid of him is 2026, because we would only have a $28 million dead cap hit, which is still insane, but I guess it's manageable if you really do want to move on. But needless to say, the situation that the Saints have put themselves in regarding just their cap space is going to have this team staying where they've been the last couple of years. Just being a fringe playoff team, 8-9 wins. And honestly, I personally just kind of view that as a waste of time. Once Drew Brees retired, they should have knocked everything down to the studs, traded away or got rid of their older, expensive players, and went into a full rebuild. The Saints are just in a bad position right now, and it's going to take a couple of years to really get out of this. But something that could help them out a ton is if they did hit on Spencer Rattler and he can develop as their future quarterback. But until he gets his opportunity, it's going to be Derek Carr at the helm, and the Saints will just continue to be a fairly mid team. But I want to know what you think about Spencer Rattler, and if you expect him to be the savior for the Saints franchise. Do you think he has what it takes to be a true franchise quarterback, or do you just view him as a backup? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But subscribe to the channel if you are new, drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.